All right, peeps, let's take a look at the Civil War, and we're going to focus just on 1862. All right, guys, let's look at the context for 1862. In 1861, remember, there's the first violence in South Carolina with Fort Sumter, and you also have the first major battle of the Civil War at the First Battle of Bull Run, where the Union is defeated. And after that defeat, remember, George McClellan will take over what is called the Army of the Potomac. That's the Northern Army. In 1862, you'll see the Southern Army get renamed in Virginia, called the Army of Northern Virginia. And now both armies have kind of woken up. They realize this will not be an easy war. So the North develops a plan called the Anaconda Plan. An anaconda is a snake that kills by kind of crushing its prey. And so the North is going to plan on doing the same thing. You can see in this bottom right-hand map, the North is going to kind of crush the South. It's going to blockade all the ports so the South can't trade. And then it's also going to attack down the Mississippi River and try and cut the South in half, and also invade in the east, where the Army of the Potomac for the North and the Army of Northern Virginia in the South will meet head-to-head again and again. The East we'll get to in 1862, but let's focus on the war in the West in 1862 first. Okay, so now let's focus on the war in the West. So the war in the West is where the Union will find its first big successes, and they are pretty much owed to their general out in the West his name is Ulysses S. Grant. You can see him right here. Ulysses S. Grant finds success early on in 1862 by the capture of a few forts here in Kentucky and in Tennessee. This kind of kicks the Confederate armies out of those territories, and Grant is free to move further into Tennessee, kind of capturing territory for the North. In April of 1862, he is near a little river in Tennessee as he moves further south, and the South attacks him. On the first day of this battle, the Battle of Shiloh, the South kind of wins the day and pushes the Union back. But the second day, April 7th, the Union gets reinforcements and ends up pushing the South almost completely out of Tennessee. So the Confederates lose this battle, but together, between the North and the South, this becomes the bloodiest battle in American history up to that point. It will be surpassed by future battles and how bloody it is, but at this point, the blood and death is shocking. Also, in April of 1862, and this is part of that Anaconda Plan, the North is able to capture the city of New Orleans, which is the South's most important port. By capturing New Orleans, they've started succeeding in the Anaconda Plan of taking the entire Mississippi River and cutting the South in half. So they're cutting it in half between Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. They're closing down the Mississippi, which is so important for the South's economy. So the Anaconda Plan is starting to work in the West. Let's look at the East, though. Okay, so the war in the East. The war in the East does not go very well for the Union early on in the war in 1862. In 1862, the South finds a lot of successes, and they owe a lot of it to their new general, Robert E. Lee. You can see him here. Robert E. Lee takes over the command of the Army of Northern Virginia for the South, and he proves to be an amazing general. So let's look at the battles that take place in 1862. Remember, General McClellan had taken over after Bull Run in 1861, and he comes up with an idea called the Peninsula Campaign, and if you look at this map to the right, you can see that he is going to take his army on ships and land them on a peninsula down here near the capital of the Confederacy, Richmond. He's going to move his army up and capture Richmond. He does this slowly, but he gets so close that eventually Robert E. Lee has to force him to retreat. So Robert E. Lee attacks, and he attacks so well, and he's such a good general that he attacks for 7 days and forces the Union Army to retreat. McClellan has to go all the way back to Washington, D.C., and the South finds some success. The South then starts moving up in Virginia, back towards Bull Run. So there's another battle that takes place there. where the Union is defeated again, and now McClellan is back in Washington, D.C., and he's back in charge of the Union Army. And the South is so confident after their 7 days victory and the second battle of Bull Run that they decide to invade the North. And so they go into Maryland here. They go into Maryland thinking that Maryland is a slave state. Even though they stay with the Union, they'll find some support there. And while there, General McClellan has to go out and face them. General McClellan will meet General Lee for the South in Antietam in September of 1862. This battle will turn out to be the bloodiest battle in American history, bloodiest single day in American history. The South will be forced to retreat, and as a result of this battle, obviously the South retreats, but Abraham Lincoln will issue something called the Emancipation Proclamation, which we'll go into greater detail in the next slide or so. But the Emancipation Proclamation will end up freeing all the slaves in the Confederacy, and that is a pretty big deal. This could be one of the many turning points in the Civil War. The Southern Army under Robert E. Lee will retreat back down into Virginia. The Northerners will eventually come back down, and there'll be one more big epic battle at a place called Fredericksburg, which is in Virginia. And here the Union will suffer a massive, massive defeat, where they lose many, many men. Let's take a look at something else now. So, in addition to the War in the West and the War in the East, we see the first and really only battle that takes place on the seas. At the beginning of the war, the South had kind of taken over one or two Union ships and decided to put metal iron plates on the side of it to stop cannonballs. They do this, and the North knows they do this, so the North builds their own something called an ironclad, which is a ship that has iron on it. And these two, and the two kind of prototypes, the two firsts of these iron ships, will meet at a place called Hampton Roads, and there will be a battle. The South will get there first, and and the South has the ship that is. That should be red. The South has the ship that is more above water. The South ship, named the Virginia, or the Merrimack, you'll hear both, gets there first and kind of sinks, and you can see it sinking old wooden ships here, before the North ship, called the Monitor, can get there like the next day. The next day, these two iron ships will meet, and they will shoot at each other for hours and hours and not do any damage. This battle is significant because it proves it's the first time that iron-covered ships meet in battle, and this changes naval warfare forever. Once these two ships are created, all other ships in all other navies for all other countries in the world are now obsolete, because no other ships can take these ships down because they can't penetrate their iron with their guns. This is a world-changing moment, and so this takes place in 1862 too. All right, let's look at the Emancipation Proclamation. So the Emancipation Proclamation, the idea that Lincoln had for this is that it would weaken the South because the South is using the slaves, its property, to make supplies, to make weapons, cannons, things like that. And so the Emancipation Proclamation will free those slaves, and so the hope is that it will weaken the South's economy and its ability to fight. It is constitutional because, and this is Lincoln's argument, because when there is a rebellion, the Constitution says the president can seize property and has certain, they're called war powers, and one of them is that it can seize property. So the key thing to know here is that the Emancipation Proclamation only applies to areas of the Confederacy that are in rebellion. And so you can see all of the stuff that is highlighted on this map, all of this, these are slave territories. But some of the territories are owned by the North. That's the stuff here in blue. Okay? This is owned by the North, which means any slaves there are not freed. Only the slaves that are still in all this red, those are slaves that are freed. because you don't want to anger. Abraham Lincoln did not want to anger Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, Maryland, in these parts. They didn't want them to secede too, which would be very hurtful to the Union. But as the Union armies will go deeper and deeper into the Confederacy, there will be more and more slaves that are freed, and more of this red that you see here, more of this red will turn white, which means free on this map. Here we are. This is a complete timeline of 1862. We talked about different chunks and we looked at different geography, but take a look at this in greater detail if you want to see it all put together. Finally, an analysis of 1862. This is proving to be a very bloody war. You see Shiloh passed the Battle of Bull Run as the most bloody battle in American history. Only a few months after that, Antietam becomes the bloodiest battle and also the bloodiest day in American history. It's proven to be a very, very bloody war. You see Southern confidence go very high, and even after their loss at the Battle of Antietam, Southern confidence is still very high. They invade the North. Their generals are probably much better than the Northern generals. The Northern generals prove, except for maybe Ulysses S. Grant, the Northern generals prove that they are not the match of the Southern generals. But most importantly here, you see that the war takes on like a higher purpose for the North, and that is the slavery purpose. They start ending slavery. They start ending slavery elsewhere, and this is kind of a turning point in the war because no Europeans are going to come and help the South now. No other countries are going to come and help the South because now the war is also about, it's protecting the Union, but it's also about ending slavery. And no other countries are going to help the South if the South is fighting for slaves. And so Abraham Lincoln, in addition to trying to unite the country again, he's also kind of denied the South any other help, and that is a very, very big deal. So I hope you've learned about the war in 1862, and off you go.